Hi, and welcome to another King's Christian Collegiate Comtech tutorial. Today we're going to create an inspirational quote graphic focusing on the theme of photography. We're also going to recreate a Nashville effect, which you might be familiar with if you've ever used the filters on Instagram. We're going to create this kind of effect using various adjustments in Photoshop CS5. So the first thing you want to do before you make any changes to any photograph is duplicate your original layer. You don't want to do anything that's going to compromise your original image. So to recreate this layer, simply hold down Command on your keyboard and click the letter J. Now you've created an exact duplicate copy of that image, and you've created it on a new layer. This layer is active, and we know it's active because it's blue. If we wanted to make any changes, the changes are going to happen specifically to this layer. So if you are trying to make changes to the top layer, but the background layer is blue, you're not going to see those changes. So make sure that your active layer is the one you want to make changes to. And we're going to crop this image because, as you can see, we can see the classroom beyond our backdrop, and we don't want that. So we're going to go over here to our tool panel, and we're going to click the crop tool. So we'll click crop, then we'll bring it over, and you can see the icon that tells us that that's the tool we're using. Simply hold down your left mouse key and drag it over your image to capture whatever section of this image you want to crop. Okay? Let go, and you'll see all of these little squares in these corners, and that allows you to make any adjustments you want to make. I want to keep this particular camera center to my image, and so I'm going to drag this right frame edge in just a little bit. So it's relatively even with the other edge. I'm happy with that. Everything that is going to be deleted from this image is now sort of darkened out, and I'm going to hit enter or return, and now we have made the appropriate changes. One of the things we're going to want to do is make some of the darker tones in this particular image a little richer, a little darker. So we're going to adjust the contrast. There are many ways to make these kinds of adjustments within Photoshop. We're going to go with some of the very simple, very basic ways that I know how. So we're going to go up to Image, we'll go down to Adjustments, and we'll go over to Contrast and Brightness. We won't worry about the brightness yet, although we may want to make an adjustment there later, but we are going to play with the contrast a little bit. So we want to bring the contrast up just a little to make some of the darker elements of this image really dark and rich. So let's slowly slide this up, and you can see that those darks are getting a little bit darker. We don't want to get too dark. If you bring it up too far, it gets too dark, and we're going to lose some of the detail in that camera, and we don't want that. So let's put it up to about 45. I think that looks pretty good. We don't want to lose too much of the color in this camera because it's green, and we're actually going to bring some of that green up a little bit. So once we've got our contrast where we want it, we're just going to click OK. That is now adjusted. Now we're going to bring that green forward a little bit. So we'll go back up to Image, we'll go over to Adjustments, and we're going to go over and down to Selective Color. What this will do is allow us to choose which of these colors, red, yellow, green, cyan, and so on, that we are going to focus on and bring forward. So we'll only grab the red tones, or it'll only grab the magentas or blues or whatever. So what we want to do first is we're going to bring up the green. So click on the color bar, and your little list will come down, and we'll grab green. Click on green. Now it's only going to make changes to the things in this image that are green. So we'll bring the cyan, and I like to bring this one up all the way to 100. Once again, depending on the subject matter of your photograph, these numbers and adjustments will vary. So let's bring our magenta down a little bit. We're going to go down to about 85. So we're trying to bring those greens up a little bit. So you can see that the green is starting to come forward, and it's separating itself from the darker sort of tarnished color that's behind it. We'll bring our yellows up a little bit to about 85 as well. And if you don't want to use the slider, you can just type in the number and it'll put it to that setting as well. And then we'll bring our blacks up all the way to 100. So our green has come forward a little bit, but we're going to bring it forward just a little bit more. So once you're happy with these color adjustments, you can then click OK. I'm going to play with the yellow a little bit as well, I think. So with the yellow, I think I'm going to bring the cyan all the way up to 100. I'm going to bring my magenta up to about 79. My yellow, within the yellow, I'm going to bring up to about 91. And my blacks, I'm going to bring up to about 80. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to click OK. Now I want to bring more of that green forward, as I said, so we're going to go back over to Image, down to Adjustments, and we'll come over here to Vibrance. And now we'll bring that vibrancy up a little bit. Again, it's completely up to you, but you can see the greens are really coming forward now. You can also adjust the saturation here, but you want to be careful with saturation because it can make things look unnatural. So let's try the saturation just a bit, maybe just up to about 20, 25. Right, so we've got that green. The green has come up quite nicely, but we're also bringing up some of the yellows in the wood, and we don't want that. So I've got it at 22. Let's go 25, and we'll click OK. So I've got my colors the way I want them. I've got my greens that are coming out. I've got my yellows. They're not too bad. Now we're going to start building the filter effect that recreates the Nashville effect that you would find on Instagram. So the first thing we want to do is go up to Layer. And then we're going to go down to New Adjustment Layer, and we'll go over to Levels. Everything here is fine, just as it is. The default settings are perfect, so we'll go OK. Now we'll go over here to what's called our Adjustment Panel. And we've got RGB, which of course stands for red, green, and blue. And we're going to click Blue. We want to change our output levels. So we're going to grab this bottom slider. Don't touch these ones up here. This will do something else to your image that you don't want. So we're going to grab our output levels. We've got our black down here. And we're slowly going to slide it over. And you can see it's turning sort of this creamy kind of bluish tone. We don't want to get too blue. So we'll put it up to, I don't know, let's say 45. Maybe 50. Once again, if you want to just make sure you nail that number without sliding around trying to find it, just hit the number 50 and there you go. Now we want to add a little bit of a creamy yellowy kind of hue to this as well. So we're going to grab our white end and we'll slowly bring that back. Not too much because it'll go too yellow. So we just want to bring just a little bit of that creamy yellow in there as well. About 200 should do it. Once we're happy with that, we are going to go back and activate our Layers panel. Click Layers. If you can't see your layers, click it and it'll show up. So now we have our background layer, our main layer, and our levels layer. So this looks a little bit yellow to me. So I'm going to go back into my main layer, okay? And I'm going to go to Image, I'm going to go to Adjustments, and I'm going to go back to Contrast. And this time I'm going to bring the contrast down. And it's going to soften all of those a little bit. So now it's a little creamier. Now we've just got a hint of blue, and we'll click OK. Now we're going to add something called a vignette. And a vignette is sort of like this dark, fuzzy, hazy sort of ring that goes around the outer edge of our frame. And so to do that, we're going to make sure that our image layer that we want to make adjustments to is active. We'll go to Filter. We'll go to Lens Correction. Click Lens Correction. And then over here, you'll see Auto Correction and Custom. Click Custom. Down here, about halfway, you'll see Vignette. And you want to bring it all the way down to that darken. And click OK. And now we've just basically created the Nashville effect on our image. Now that we have our image finished, we want to start adding some text. And this is very simple. The first thing we want to do is create a new layer. So you go down here and there's a little, looks like a little folded page. And you simply click on that, that's going to create a new layer, layer 2. And then we move over to our text tool, you'll see the T, and we want the horizontal type tool or text tool. Click on that so that it's open. Bring your cursor over to your image, click on your image and start typing whatever it is you want to add for text. Our text is going to be a quote by Ansel Adams, a very famous photographer, who said, "You don't take a photograph, you make it." So that's what we'll do. As you can see, our text is much wider than our image, so we want to make a few adjustments. So the first thing we're going to do is drop this down, and it's just like clicking and returning on a Word document. And you click on it, hit enter, and it goes down like that. And we'll center this to your image. Now, depending on your quote, you may want to split it up. That's what I'm going to do. You may choose to do something a little bit different. Again, it's going to be completely up to you. But there are a number of things you can do to make the text more interesting, and we'll look at those in a few minutes. So we've done the first half of our quote, "You don't take a photograph." We want to finish it in a different part of the image, so we're going to create another layer. Grab our text tool, and finish it off. Now, this is not where I want this text, so we go up to our Move tool, which is the very top of your toolbar. Click on that, and you'll just drag this around and center it. Put it wherever you like. Now, we want to do a few things. We're going to add some effects to our text. So to do that, again, make sure that the text you want to put an effect on is highlighted. It'll be blue. And go down here to the FX button and click FX. So let's say we want to put a drop shadow. It kind of makes the text stand out a little bit against the graphic. Just click on drop shadow, and now you can see it just putting in the drop shadow. Here we can make all kinds of different adjustments. Opacity, how see-through is it? Is at 75 is the default. You can bring it up to 100, makes it much darker. You can bring it down to 10 if you want, and it's very subtle. 75 is the default, and I find that that works best. You can change the angle to 30 degrees, 90 degrees, minus 95 degrees, minus 163. It just depends on where you want it. 30 is always nice for me. For our purposes, we'll leave it at 30. Distance, you can decide how far away from your text you want it. Again, I think 20 is the default, so we'll leave it at 20. Spread is set at 0, but you can spread it out up to 100 if you want. I don't like that. It looks a little too cartoony for me, so I'm going to bring it right back down to, I don't know, let's say 2. And then size, 21 is the default. Spreads it out more. It looks more like a sort of a darker glow. I don't like that, so let's leave it at 21. Once you're happy with what you want it to do, just click OK. Now, we put a drop shadow down here, but we don't have it in the other part of our text. So we want to add that as well. So we go down and we highlight the next part of the text. That's the one we want to make the change to. Go back to Effects, hit Drop Shadow, and it will automatically apply whatever settings we had from the last time we used it. So then we click OK, and we're happy. So you don't take a photograph, you make it. As said by who? Ansel Adams. How do we know? Well, we're going to put his name on there as well. So we're going to create another new layer. We're going to go in here to our text type tool, and we're going to type in Ansel Adams. Now, it's the same text, it's the same size. We'll throw a drop shadow on it, but it's kind of boring. It's getting a little bit repetitive. Let's change this text. So highlight it by simply holding and dragging across, just like a Word document. And let's go up to our fonts, and let's choose something a little more interesting. I'm going to use something that I've downloaded called Beauty and the Beast, if I can find it. Beauty and the Beast. And it's a little bit more like a handwritten capital letters. Now, of course, it's now too big. I don't like it. It's too big. So I'm going to go over here to my text size, and you can see these two little arrows, and you can just slide it down, and as you slide it down, it makes the text smaller and smaller and smaller. If you're happy with it, you can just simply click to your Move tool, says Ansel Adams. You can move it around. If you want to move it ever so slightly, just incrementally, use your keypad. The up and down arrows, the left and right arrows, and you can place it wherever you want. We want to put a drop shadow on that one as well, so we go to FX and drop shadow. And now it's got the drop shadow. A little more subtle because it's a different style of font, but it's there. I'm happy with it. It uses all those same settings. We'll click OK. Now, maybe I'm thinking, you know what, it's still a little bit dull. I think that the text needs to be, I don't know, made a little more interesting. There's all kinds of different effects that we can do. So let's go to our first text layer. You don't take a photograph. We'll go back to effects and let's make it bevel and emboss. So it looks like it's 3D coming out of the image. Click bevel and emboss. And now it looks kind of like the raised lettering on your Visa or bank card or something. It's okay. I don't think I like it all that much. So maybe I can change it to outer bevel, make it look a little bit differently so it's popping out a little bit more. Don't really like that. Make it look like it's embossed. That's a little better. I like that. So we'll keep that as okay. We'll do the same thing with you make it. FX, bevel and emboss, and change it to emboss so it's the same, and click OK. Now we probably don't want to do that to the Ansel Adams because it is thinner and it won't look right. So we just want to simply make our adjustments. Let's center that appropriately, and I think we're finished. There we have our final product. You don't take a photograph, you make it. We created an inspirational quote graphic by also recreating an Instagram filter. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a very simple process, and again, it's not the only way to do it, not by a long shot, but it's one of the easiest. So I hope you enjoyed it, and good luck.